So here is the original French pocket rocket, the Citroën AX. It's a platform share of the Peugeot 106 and managed to be amazingly even lighter than that car. So with this Citroën AX, it was hugely popular in France, one of the biggest selling cars, and a vast range of engines. It starts from less than 1 litre. This is actually quite an interesting one. This is the GT model. So this has actually got about 85 horsepower and it's really lightweight. So great fun to drive, really engaging. They also did a lot for the design of the car when they went more sporty with it. This is the GT Sportive version, but these actually had things like front fog lights, wider wheel arches, ducktail spoiler. The tailgate is actually fiberglass, believe it or not. So it's one of the only cars you're recommended not to put a bike rack on the back, because actually it will potentially snap the tailgate. And the gas struts are held up on the glass of the rear window rather than actually the tailgate itself. But yeah, known for quite snappy lift-off oversteer, even as the basic cars, the little 1 litres. Quite a lot of fun to drive. Really, they did a GTI version of this, but actually for me it was the GT that had the twin choke carburettor. Really great throttle response, and yeah, had a really strong production run. Were pretty durable. Contrary to popular belief, mechanically quite durable. The trim was quite fragile, but if you find a nice one of these, you should definitely hunt it down. In France and mainland Europe, they actually did a sport version which had a more powerful twin choke carburettor and up to 100 horsepower. Those were very successful in rallying as well. So although the car is known for being a bit brittle trim-wise, mechanically very tough indeed. Not many left. There are some kind of more basic models with low mileage and relatively low cost and low owners. They're worth fun to hunting down. Even the most basic car is still a lot of fun to drive, to keep going, even with a little 4-speed gearbox. So even if you find one of these with the rev counter and you're doing pretty well spec-wise, they're very basic cars. But yeah, great way to get around and really comprehensive styling. Citroën went all the way with their sporty cars. And yeah, hilarious to drive. So if you find a non-rusty, low mileage one, buy it and enjoy it. It will put a massive smile on your face whenever you take it for a drive. Right, so here we have something quite unusual and quite rare. Looks a bit bland, but actually this car is very special. This is a Citroën Zara, not just any old Citroën Zara. This is actually the VTS version. Now, the Citroën Zara was kind of the rival for Citroën for things like the Ford Escort, Vauxhall Astra, those kind of things. And they made a performance version of that car called the VTS. They had one just below this called the VTR, which had some of the similar design and styling, but it didn't have the powertrain and chassis that this actual car had. There's a very special car called the Peugeot 306 GTI 6 that gets all the plaudits, the rally version even more so, whereas this car actually has the same mechanicals of that car with a few subtle differences. So this car again looks quite boring, but actually you've got the same brakes as the 306 GTI in the rally. You've got the same engine, 167 horsepower, 0 to 60 in less than 8 seconds, will do 138 miles an hour. A load of torque as well. But this car had two main differences to the 306 GTI 6. This car actually had a 5-speed gearbox rather than the 6-speed gearbox in the Peugeot, and actually some say the ratios were even better. And also the rear suspension and torsion bar setup was different as well. So that basically means it's even more firm, even more fun, even more sporty to drive, even more likely to give you massive lift-off oversteer, so quite a lot of fun to pedal around in. The spec was quite high. One of my favourite things on this car is actually the rims. The wheels are really boring. You barely know they're any different to the standard VTR model. And again, the interior had some quite supportive seats, so quite strong bolts on the side. It also has some white dials on the outside and a chrome tip gear knob. But other than that, it was very similar to the standard Citroën Zara of the time. Not the most beautiful car in the world, and very little to tell it was something special. But the back really practical boot, so massive trunk. And again, relatively nondescript, but awful lot of fun to drive. I owned a pre-facelift one of these. This is one of the very last pre-facelift cars of Wire Edge. They facelifted it shortly after, and I had a great time in this car. Really responsive steering and really different and unusual. Not the typical 306 GTI / rally type thing. So yeah, love this car, and it's really great to see one so well preserved here. It's only done 72,000 miles and only had 2 owners. So a real kind of exceptional car at Festival of the Unexceptional. So I wanted to take you through a car that's often kind of overlooked and not really spoken about very much. It was a really cool car, one of the best-selling cars in the UK by one of the most popular brands, Ford. And this replaced the kind of iconic and very successful Ford Sierra, that rear-wheel drive saloon. Came out in 1993, the Ford Mondeo. and this was one of the first cars developed by the late Richard Parry Jones, and this was Ford's mission to really make cars more fun and engaging to drive, and they've kind of kept that ever since. Up to the point this car came out, the cars are pretty stodgy. Okay, Cosworth's accepted and the excitement of RS turbos and XR3Is, but they were pretty uncouth. This was really sophisticated, went straight to the top of its class when it came out. It was launched on the launch activities by Jackie Stewart, ex-Formula 1 driver, and they were really focusing on the drivability. So although the car was front-wheel drive, so the perception is front-wheel drive isn't as fun to drive as rear-wheel drive, actually they really got this car just right. So the styling was great, the packaging was great, it's very kind of space-aged inside, a really forward-thinking car. Had a huge range of engines, went from 1.6 petrol 16 valve, 1.8 16 valve, which is the most popular one. Had a 2 litre 16 valve and an SI version with body kits and wheels on, but still mechanically very similar. But then in 94, 95, 2 years after the car was launched, they launched it with a V6 engine, 2.5 litre V6, about 165 horsepower. That managed to get some really strong reviews. The media loved how that car drove. So the standard car came with just hubcaps. It was completely subtle. You couldn't tell it was anything special. Like other cars this era, they stuck a big engine under a really boring looking car, and it made it fantastic to drive. It's one of the few cars that was scoring 5 out of 5 stars in the press reviews at the time. So really special car. They never made a super high performance version to replace the Sierra Cosworth. They made an ST200 and an ST24, but it never quite got the same level of performance as those earlier Cosworths, but it was really well regarded. They also did a four-wheel drive version. Actually, that four-wheel drive version went across the Arctic ice and did the whole circumnavigation of the world in that car, and it carried on. It was a 2 litre petrol engine, and they sold very few of those cars, but it actually lasted the journey. So pretty enduring as well. Nowadays they rust pretty badly and you need to do quite a lot to them, but they are still available. You can get them with relatively low owners. They're quite popular though, because they drive really nicely and parts supply is still quite good. But yeah, if you can find a nice basic, for me I'd probably get like a 94, 95 phase 1 car, really basic spec with hubcaps, a V6, and really just enjoy driving it. It's a fantastic way to travel. So yeah, the Mondeo, it's a lot to talk about with this. So what is a relatively perceived as quite a mundane car, there's a lot to say about it. So here we have a modern day interpretation, more modern day interpretation of the iconic 205 GTI. Probably the best hot hatchback ever made. I know the Golf GTI Mark 1 came before that and some other ones as well, but actually the 205 GTI was always considered the kind of best to drive. The Peugeot 306 came after the 205, kind of started production around 1993, the 306. They originally had a performance version called the S16, so 150 horsepower, 4-cylinder, 16 valve engine. It was also shared with the Peugeot 405 Mi16 at the time. And they did a 2 litre XSI, those kind of things, but it wasn't till 1994, 1995, actually a bit later than that, when they started to talk about a GTI version. And then they brought out the GTI with more power than the S16, so it had 167 horsepower. But key to Peugeot's communication piece, what they really talked about, was the 6-speed gearbox, hence GTI 6 on this model. It's known for just being fantastic to drive, really great steering feel, really great agility. It's got a kind of passive rear wheel steering system, which means that the rear end would feel far more kind of agile and lively, to try and offset the fact it's a bigger car than the 205, which was known for its lift-off oversteer. This kind of engineered that fun back in. Really great sounding engine, so it does about 137 miles an hour, 0 to 60 in just under 8 seconds, but really engaging to drive. In 1998 was quite a big year, because just at the time, just after they facelifted the car, this is actually a facelifted 306 GTI 6, they brought out the 306 Rally. And what that was apparently mechanically identical to 306 GTI 6, but it actually reduced some standard features, a bit of sound deadening, air conditioning, cheaper grade seats, those kind of things. Still had the iconic 15-inch cyclone wheels, but other than that it was pretty basic, and it had some rally stickers on it. That car was really revered. I've owned 2 of them and they've both been absolutely fantastic. So even lighter than the standard 306 GTI 6, which wasn't a heavy car in the first place. And the agility and the fun factor and the engagement of that car, I still miss mine, I want to get another one. It was really great to own. So in terms of buying one, I mean, it's sister car to the Zara VTS, although this one's 6-speed. You can still find some, well I say you can, they've gone up a lot in value recently, 306 GTI 6s. Rallies have gone stratospheric, GTI 6s followed shortly after. S16s are not yet there, so if you want an early 306 S16, they're still quite low priced. But yeah, a nice 306 GTI 6 now is probably a 4 or 5 grand car. A really nice rally is probably 8, 9 or 10,000. But they really are worth seeking out because they're incredibly engaging to drive and far more usable than the early 205 GTIs and less likely to bite you with heavy cornering. So really amazing machine, and I'd recommend seeking one out.